Hello and welcome back to another episode of Strong Collectors Comics. My name is Jordan and I'm joined today as ever by my plucky co-host Dakota. And today we're looking at the new Agatha show. And with that coming out, we thought it'd be a good time to look at how we're feeling. We're going to check in with you guys. We're checking in with ourselves on how we're feeling about Disney Plus shows these days. And Dakota, just right off the bat, where do you stand with Disney Plus Marvel shows right now?
I mean, I would say I'm still that diehard fan that's no matter what, I'm going to watch the show. I'm going to watch it all the way through. I think my level of excitement and maybe my level of anticipation for sure has definitely faltered. I think at first I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. We're going to get so much more, comic book, movie, show stuff. And then I think they just kind of dropped the ball a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think it was very interesting at the time when they announced they were going from Marvel on the big screen MCU to we're getting MCU shows, right? And I do feel like when that first started, they still had that sense with the shows of like, you can't miss it. Like everybody was tuning in. I felt like with WandaVision, which is kind of an odd choice for like one of their first, I mean, it's the first one they released before even Falcon Winter Soldier. I don't think it was supposed to be, but that to me was actually pretty cool because it was like we're doing something with the medium of TV that we couldn't really do in a movie, but it's getting kind of weird, a little bit different. And I think that was super exciting. But I remember most MCU fans were tuning in even to like WandaVision. I think early on they of course had that retention of people sticking with them.
Fresh off of Endgame, yeah.
Right, like I got to see what's happening next, right?
Yeah.
And for better or for worse, I think there was that expectation of all of these that are coming next are like the next piece of the puzzle, right? Like this is setting up what's coming next. We got to tune into what's happening. But I think with that was also the problem of getting so many shows that it almost became like a little overbearing, I feel, for people, even for me in general, sometimes like, oh, another show, like, is this one the one that I got to see? And I think for a while, for me, like initially hearing about an Agatha show, if that had come out right after like WandaVision, maybe like a year or 6 months, I think I would have been really stoked. And Sam, my wife, would have been as well, because she's real into the witchy stuff. I think the witchy stuff's pretty cool. I know we've been hearing it's going to be more of musical. I know that's not necessarily would pull you in, Dakota, but I'd be like, hey, a musical witch show sounds kind of fun. But neither of us are like super like we got to tune in and show up for the Agatha show. And maybe that's okay that it's not like every show is one that you have to see, which I think might have been the problem in the beginning, right? But then the problem with that is if they're using this, they always say this, I guess, in interviews where it's like this one is going to be really important for the future or what's next. And I'm like, is it? And then if it is, like, I have to not only go to one movie, I got to watch, 8 episodes to figure out what's coming next.
Which I think is a little bit almost, it's not in the sense of like, I know how movies and TV shows operate, but to me, it's almost a little bit backwards of what I would prefer because I think they want to save their big stuff for the blockbuster movie.
Right.
And, you're going to go sit down, you're going to watch, an hour and a half to 2.5 hours of movie. And I get that that's kind of how that goes, but you get a little bit more like character development, or at least there's more opportunity for that in the shows.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of using some of those more like lower level storylines, like Secret Invasion and like even like WandaVision a little bit. But like that one, I think for sure that one's probably the only one that I'm like, this has to be a TV show because of how they like kind of episode by episode kind of progressed it. But I think like Moon Knight, I think I prefer that being a show because you get more of it versus a movie. But I just kind of,
Right. Yeah, I think I agree. It comes down to like picking the right material to be a TV show, right? I think WandaVision made sense. I think right off the bat, Falcon Winter Soldier, I was a little like, I feel like you could have just maybe spiced this up a little bit and just made it a movie. Like it didn't seem like it benefited from TV format. I love Loki. Big, huge Loki guy. And I think that one made sense because they were able to do things that were a little more weird, like couldn't quite be done in a movie, I don't think. You mentioned Secret Invasion. I got to say, Dakota, that was the first MCU show I actually didn't finish. I think I got 4 episodes in, and
Which is a statement
it
because
broke.
you're a big comic fan, and to not
Absolutely.
watch a project is insane.
Well, and that one to me really did feel like it was just content. Like that to me was the first time I was
Mm,
watching a show and it was like you had to put something, or you felt like you had to put something out. Like even
yeah.
I know there were criticisms of She-Hulk. I think for what it was, I thought that was enjoyable. I think it got
Yeah.
way too much hate for
Hmm.
the absolute wrong reasons. Secret Invasion though for me was just like, oh man. And
Yeah.
then I still didn't see Echo. I gotta admit, Dakota.
Mm. It
Uh,
was better than I was expecting, but I also
yeah,
like know almost nothing about Echo.
yeah,
But I kind of agree that I think I like the idea of the specials, like with
oh
the
yeah,
Werewolf by Night special, because I
mm-hmm,
think a lot of these shows could benefit from that style. Like we don't need a full
yeah,
like blockbuster movie out of it, but I also don't think
mm-hmm,
we need a full 8 episode series out of it. Where that's where I
right,
think Echo probably would have shined is if we had given
mm-hmm.
her a Disney Plus special.
Well, yeah, they're
Um,
kind of like because Werewolf by Night was awesome. So it was basically a one shot
mhm,
in like film where it's like here's a
right.
cool little story, you get in, here's a world, there's some characters you might like, and I really think what they should have done, you could have had a show or two, but be like we're just gonna put out some one shots. So if you watch it and it
Mhm,
does well and people like it, maybe we will spin it off into its own show. But we
yeah.
don't necessarily need to ask people to commit to 8 episodes because I think that was where they started to kind of lose people. Because now, to me, a
Mhm.
Disney Plus Marvel show, it's like, do I need to see it? I don't know if I really do. Um, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's still just the grumpy old MCU fan in me coming out, Dakota. I'm trying to be a little more optimistic, I
I mean, I think
suppose.
I will say on the defense of the MCU and maybe Disney Plus, but just like in general, the MCU, I think a lot of folks kind of look back on like the beginning to end game with, I don't know, it's kind of weird to say nostalgia because it's not that long ago, but there was
Yeah,
that like obvious build of like, this is amazing. But it's also the first time that ever happened.
right.
So I think anything post Endgame, like Endgame was like a spectacle. That's like a world
Hmm.
event almost.
Right.
So then to be like, I think people just expect it to go one step above and above and above, and they just want the next bigger and better thing
Yeah.
versus like, okay, we just had the biggest and best thing we've ever had.
Hmm.
Let's dial it back and then build it
Yeah.
back up. And I think
Hmm.
fans and maybe even the MCU themselves didn't really like fully embrace that idea of let's
Hmm.
relax and build up versus like, no, what's the next end game? I need another blockbuster. And then like
Hmm.
nothing has really come close to that satisfaction of Endgame because you don't have anything this
Yeah.
post Endgame era to have built
Right.
up to that hype. Like if
Well,
we show up and we have Moon Knight and Ms. Marvel
yeah,
and She-Hulk as the next Avengers team, it's kind of like we didn't really build them up enough for me to care about them
right.
like we did with Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. And I think you got me thinking now. I think it would have been kind of cool if they had used the TV format as like kind of what they did with Netflix. I think it flopped with the Defenders, but I think that
Mm-hmm.
was just terrible execution. But I liked how they did that, where each of the characters had their show, and then you had like the crossover like TV event, and that
Mm-hmm.
could have been like if you're saying, okay, we want to do Secret Invasion, and you don't want to do it with the main characters, then set that up maybe in like your shows. Like I think that'd have been kind of cool if
Oh
in
yeah.
like WandaVision you start to see, oh, this guy's a scroll. Oh, Miss Marvel. Oh, wait a minute, that guy's a scroll.
Mm,
And then like you kind of then Secret Invasion is like, okay, this is the payoff. You maybe didn't have to watch all these, but like just basically redo what you did with the movies, but like replicate it
right.
in TV form. Because I think that the
Yeah.
difficult part, it's like, okay, people I get what you're saying too. I don't know if it's necessarily like we wouldn't have accepted that it's not this huge spectacle, but they didn't feel like they were really like talking to each other very much, like
Mm-hmm.
outside of Loki. But even Loki's kind of its own thing. But WandaVision, like
Even yeah,
that
movies
hasn't really
to
connected.
yeah.
Moon Knight hasn't connected. I guess Miss Marvel showed up, but so it was just kind of like I feel like that was maybe it was two things too many to like, okay, we're gonna dial it down, but we're also kind of getting rid of the like interconnected world park that's kind of like building to, oh, I got
Hmm.
to tune in next time. I got to,
Right.
and I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity. Because then when you got to Secret Invasion, it's just like now you got to set up a whole like epic crossover kind of from
Hmm.
scratch. It felt like to me, and maybe that's
Yeah.
why it was hard to like buy into it. Um,
Hmm. I mean, I
I
think
don't know.
you're on the right
Yeah.
track of like if we almost had like two separate MCUs running at the same time of,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the movies are meant for Avengers type
Yeah.
characters, and then in the shows we were building like young Avengers, kind of like they are right now, but just kind of more focusing on that. And then you can kind of meant like, the Avengers are doing a mission or somebody in that team.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where you have the Marvels, and then Ms. Marvel can mention like, oh, hey, I'm going to be, putting together my own team of stuff. And then that's kind of your
Yeah.
interweaving without having to watch
Right.
everything for the
Yeah.
casual fans.
Mm-hmm.
But then you still have that like payoff of, the shows are all kind of
Mm-hmm.
intertwined, building to something. The
Right.
movies are all building to something new.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe down the road, when Secret Wars or whatever, then the Young Avengers and the Avengers all team up together.
Right.
That
And
could be
it's
cool.
yeah, I agree. And it wouldn't be like, oh, if you miss this TV show, you're so confused. They just be, oh, this was kind of
Mm-hmm.
a cool event. If you watched it, you might appreciate some of these other characters a little more. But I think that's what the Avengers always did was like, yes, you wanted to tune in for the movies, but you could still kind of get brought up to speed. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just like to me, it was so jarring with WandaVision, and then you see Scarlet Witch in Multiverse of Madness, and if you miss
Yeah.
WandaVision, you probably have been like, "What the heck is going on?" Like
Right.
this makes no sense.
For sure.
Even then, I'd argue from WandaVision to that didn't make as much sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's like I don't know. I just feel like there wasn't as much planning for what seemed pretty important to switch your
Mm-hmm.
MCU to TV. So I'm wondering, like, if I know they've talked a lot about readjusting their strategy with films. I don't know how much of that is trickling down. I think they've dialed it back a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because that Armor Wars show was going to be a movie and now it's probably canceled. We don't know
Yeah.
where that Wonder Man, I think that's still happening,
True.
maybe.
Yeah.
What was the other one?
Ironheart.
Ironheart. That was supposed to come out like 2 years ago, I think. So
Yeah.
I, I don't know. I wonder. I mean, I'm excited for Daredevil. I think that's a
Yeah.
great project that they're working on. I'll tune in for that for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I guess for me, it's kind of shifted to like I don't know if I need to see every MCU Disney Plus show. Is kind of where I'm at.
Interesting. Okay.
Um, I mean,
I
if it
would be curious
really
to know if the listeners are on that same page of like they're also not as interested to see everything.
well, and maybe it'll be different as they like slow down. I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
that might be part of it. Like, I think Daredevil could be the one if I watch it and it lands the way I think and hope it will. I'll be like, okay, and then maybe like I think it was just too much too quick. I think even for
Yeah.
for me, I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to see more specials because I did love Werewolf by
Oh yeah.
Night. I think that's a great way to, if you just have characters, just be like, hey, maybe this guy will take off, maybe not. But here's a
Mm-hmm.
hour long episode. If you like it, we'll make more.
And it's coming up on
So
2 years since we got that, right? And
I
that's the only
know,
special
yeah.
they've done.
I guess technically there was the Guardians
Oh, the Christmas one,
holiday,
yeah.
Christmas. It seems strange to me though that they haven't done more stuff with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know. That seems like a format that they should be taking more advantage of. I'd like to see that
Yeah.
personally, but I guess we'll see. Those are some of our thoughts on the Disney Plus MCU shows. Please let us know below if I'm way out of line, if all the MCU projects are still not skippable. What would you like to see in an MCU project? Which ones should be used moving forward? Please comment, like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, as always, stay strong.